Ruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah, we'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita on tasting and halacha. That's great sponsoring a shir called Irgin Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
A question that comes up often: a person is tasting food, whether it's Erev Shabbos or Stam, you're making food and you taste it to make sure that it's seasoned properly. Do you make a bracha? I'll give you a common shayla. Especially it was again in the old Beis Medrash where the coffee room is downstairs. You make a coffee downstairs, you want to taste it to see if it's enough sugar. Where do you make the bracha? Downstairs? Or taste it and make the bracha upstairs? In other words, is there a bracha on tasting food? We'll soon see it's also negeya on the taanis to use mouthwash, toothpaste. We had an interesting shayla where someone was taking a course to become a cook. And part of the lessons was he had to make food and taste it, and it was tray for food. Can you taste it and spit it out? Very challenging question. A woman was, it was a long Friday, summer Friday, and first thing in the morning she made the cholent, and by mistake she tasted a little bit of the cholent. And she could not believe that you'll have to go a whole Friday morning, fleishigs, not to have a coffee. So we'll see many other questions, but the common denominator is, what is the halachic status of ta'ima, of tasting? In other words, you make a bracha on eating food. How about tasting food? You wait 6 hours when you eat fleishigs. How about tasting fleishigs? And as we'll see, it's negeya to mouthwash, negeya to Listerine strips. Do you make a bracha on it? There's a very wide spectrum of questions that we're going to deal with today. So before we can begin, I want to make a point that we have the word ta'ima in a different context that has a very different meaning. And that is, you're allowed to be toyim out of the sukkah. It's more in sukkah daf chavav. You're allowed to be toyim before a mitzvah. You're allowed to have a little snack before you light Chanukah licht. That's a different meaning. There ta'ima means snacking. I don't mean that. I mean tasting. Whether it's tasting on your tongue and spitting it out, or tasting on your tongue and swallowing it, but it's no more than tasting to discern if the food is properly spiced. Now you're wondering, what's the shayla? Minimally, you're having anah from the food. After all, you taste the food means you have a taste of the food. Why don't we say that you're mechuyev to make a bracha based on the Gemara in Brachas Lamed Hey, Asa la'adam she'enem elam hazeh b'loi bracha. And even a slight hana, ki'ilu mal, the Gemara says. It's only a little bit, but that's the Mechaben Reish Yud Sif Aleph, that even a kosher of hana is also without a bracha. So the shayla is, what's the whole sugya? Let's say ta'ima is a form of hana is also b'loi bracha. But that is incorrect. Because Magen Avraham and Reish Tezayin, Sifkat Nalef, discusses hanas that there's no bracha. For example, a beautiful singing, a symphony orchestra, showering, sicha. Zok Magen Avraham, the basic klal is you only make a bracha on hana that enters the guf, achil that enters the guf. Hana per se is not enough of a mechayev. So now we understand the crux of the issue. True, tasting food is a hana. The question is that hana's achila that requires a bracha, or is it like not more than a symphony orchestra that there's no bracha? So that's the question. Now, there's another factor that might lead us to the conclusion that there is no bracha on tasting, because as we know, there are two components of achila. What the poskim call hana asacheich, the pleasure of taste, and then there's anas ma'ayim, the nutritional benefit of food. By tasting, especially if you spit it out, there's no anas ma'ayim. Maybe there's no bracha unless there's anas ma'ayim. That's our main question. So even though there's hana, but it's only cheich, and cheich is not enough of mechayev. And as we'll see, this is a beautiful sugya because it's based on a few lines of the Gemara, but each word will be very precious to us. Says the Gemara in Brachas Yudalid, a question. Ashari b'taanis, someone's in midst of a taanis, ma'u she'yitay. Rashi explains, can he taste the food to see if it needs more salt or spice. What's the shaila? Do we say achila ushasiya kabel alei v'holeka? Do we say that your taanis, you'll makabel it not to eat, but you're not eating, you're tasting? Or maybe your Kabbalah's taanis was not to have hana, and this is enough of hana to asa. In other words, what is your Kabbalah's taanis? Was it eating? This is not eating. Was it hana? This is enough of hana. And the Gemara concludes, Toyim ve'ein b'kach klum. Like I say in English, don't worry about it, it's garnished. Taste, gesundheit. Now the obvious question is, what does that mean? You are makabel taanis? It's a chi of taanis, a chi of drabanan. Shabbat Sabbatam is Tisha B'Av. So what are you saying? Since you created a taanis, it's on your terms. Taanis sibi mechuyev to fast. Says Tais, you're right. The Gemara is not talking about a taanis sibur. Taanis sibur is not up to you. The Gemara is talking about a taanis yachid, bahab, shayvavim, chasin kala, taanis chaloim. Then it's up to you because it's your creation. But on a regular taanis, it's also to be time, and we'll soon apply this lemaisa. Now, very nice. So we see regarding taanis, tzibur is also to fast. Taanis yachid is okay. What about halachos brachas? So now the Gemara addresses halachos brachas, but listen to the way the Gemara says it. Tanya nami hachi matemes eina tunu bracha. Matemes means a taster, doesn't need a bracha. Vashari b'tainis toyim ve'ein b'kach klum. So the Gemara equates fasting and bracha. Now the big question is, how could you eat a kosher without a bracha? Zok Toisvis, quoting the Rach, you got it all wrong. We're not talking about someone that tastes and swallows. That's chayiv in a kosher. This is what's called toyim upoilet, which really is the real tasting. You put on the tip of your tongue, you try to think about it, and then you spit it out. Now, I want to say this once and for all. We're talking about spitting out. You know, the Gemara says in Chagiga Daf Hey, there's a mishpat, kes kol ma'isa lekim yavev a mishpat al kol nelam. A person has to give a din v'cheshbon for causing someone else distress. Rashi says, ktsas, a little discomfort, and one mashal is someone spits in front of his friend. You see, in the Goy Yisrael, people spit. It's very uncouth and very uncomfortable. So when someone is toyim u'poilet, make sure it conforms with ben adam chaverei. You don't spit out in front of someone else. It's just not menschlich. I'm talking about when it's not a steer to ben adam chaverei. But Tosfos says the whole toyim that there's no bracha is toyim u'poilet. A housewife Friday morning, the kitchen is empty, taste the food, spit it out, no one sees. That's no bracha. But toyim u'poileya is mashram Tosfos. How do you make a bracha? Why do you make a bracha? Why not? You have anos meyayim, it's a regular achila. But toyim u'poilet, ein bekach klum. Now Tosfos says, what does that mean, ein bekach klum? Toyim u'poilet is not considered hana. You spit it out. Now there's a beautiful tzlach, and I can't go through the whole thing, but ayin sham v'timtza nachas. The tzlach wonders, what's the lashon of the Gemara of ein bekach klum? So he says that really the Gemara gave two choices. What's the Kabbalah's taanis, achila or hana? And you know what the Gemara's response is? Like say in America, none of the above. It's not achila, it's not hana. What is it? Nothing. Toyim and poilet, it's not even hana. Oy bazoi, even on a taanis is mut, it's not hana. Now, this is the shita of Tosfos, that toyim u'poilet is not even considered hana. I must tell you, Roiv Rishonim, Mordechai, the Rivosh, the Ritva, the Oruch, and the Taz, and Magen Avraham, and Tovkuf, Samach Zayin, learn a different shot. Toyim u'poilet is not achila, but it's hana. It's hana. You're tasting it, It's the sensation of taste. Why is it mutta? Because the taanis, you makabel not to eat. Team is okay. Keep that in mind, we'll soon use that. But here we have a very clear guidance. Toyim u'baileya is a regular ma'is achila on a taanis. And like this, toyim u'baileya needs a bracha. Now the big question on this shita is, the Gemara concludes, ad kama, how much are you allowed to toyim? Ad revius. Okay, the Mishnah says revius by drink, and a kazayis by oichel. Now here's the big question. If we're talking about toyim u'poilet, so what do you care if he has a revius? Why should we ask more than a revius? And this is why the Rid, quoted by the Shibai Lekir Reish Ayin Tes, he says it can't be toyim u'poilet. So why is a revius asa? And that's why he learns that the Gemara is saying an incredible chiddush. Ta'ima is even toyim u'baileya. You taste it and you swallow it. But as the Rid says, and the Ra'ah and brachas is the same shita, even if you swallow it, but if your kavana is to taste and not to eat, there's no bracha. We understand. Being toyim more than a kazayis, you're playing games, you're pushing it. You're not really ta'ima. That's achila. So you have the shita of the rif, of the Ra, the Rid. I must mention the Rambam, in the beginning of Hilchos Brachos, the Rif and Taanis, Daf Dalid, that ta'ima is mutter even without a bracha. How could you swallow below bracha? So here's the big chiddush for today, but that's what the Poskim say. That it's, the way the Magen Avraham puts it very bluntly, ha'ika toli b'kavanas halev. If you eat l'shem achila, then you make a bracha and a kosher. If you are really labeling it as a ta'ima, ta'ima is not achila. In fact, the Kesef Mishnah, that's the Beis Yosef in the Kesef Mishnah, he says, I have a remes to this chiddush. What's the makar of brachas? He says, v'yachalta v'savatu v'rachta. The only bracha on achila is if it's l'shem svia. If you're doing it just for ta'ima, there's no bracha. Frek the Kesef Mishnah on himself. What are you talking about? That pasuk in Parashat Yakov is talking about benching. So there's enough of a remes of bracha rishayna. Very interesting. Beis Yosef says a remes, but no doubt about it, the main yesod here is, and that's the way the Magen Avraham says that lashon, ikka toli b'kavanas halev. If there's no kavanas achila, that's why ta'im is mutter b'loi bracha. This is in Reish Yud, Magen Avraham Sif Kat and Vav. Mitzvah tzrichas kavana. Now we see achila tzricha kavana. But we'll soon see taanis. There's no such heta. You can't be toyim u'baileya because you're not allowed to eat. So that's not totally in kavana. But here we see this yesod. Now let me add a little more geshmak. When a person picks up a samim, he makes a bracha. He ate nothing, you make a bracha. So how could it be you eat less than a kazayis and there's no bracha? So Teretz is pashit. Haylu chudei. The b'chiv of samim is a pasuk, kol haneshama. But here the bracha is v'yachalta uverachta. And taka the Raviyah in brachas aleph memches mamish and a half a line. Gar mi psamim shemavarach asmachta the kol haneshama. So here we see, we could say a source in the Torah for ta'ima. The way the Kesef Mishnah learns, v'yachalta v'savatu v'rachta. The Rashba in the Tshuva, Aleph Reish Samach Zaya wonders, how could we say that Yitoyim and Poilet is mutter? And the Gemara has a tzad that it's asa. How could ta'ima be asa? How could there be a tzad that it's asa? He says, what's so schwer? The pasuk in Eoiv, with cheich oichel, yitam loy, you taste it on your cheich, on your palate, and it's kishmak. So I was thinking we have already a pasuk in Torah and iksuvim that te'ima, which does give hana, but regarding brachas, it's totally in hanas me'ayim. Taanis, we'll soon see taanis tzibur, even tima u'poilet is asa, because taanis is even an issa hana. And we'll soon see a pasuk in Navi to make it Tanakh. But now let's return to our original question. What is Lamaisa, the Chiyuv bracha? Is it Achila? Is it Hana? So the answer seems to be that eating B'kavanas Achila, and also part of the equation is, don't forget, there has to be Anas Meyayim. We'll soon see how that plays a role. But this is what the Poskim say, that the Chiyuv bracha is Achila L'Shem Achila, that gives Hanas Meyayim. Now, before you apply this specifically, I want to add a little more gishmak. Imagine the following shayla. Someone, I'm not sure why, but he was moed hana, he can't have any hana from cholent. Strange yid, but that's what he says. And punkt then, someone says, do me a favor, I gotta run, I'm making a cholent, I can't taste it, please taste the cholent for me. I just have to know if I have to add salt. Can the moed hana from cholent taste cholent for someone else? So what would you say? We'd say, well, he's not eating it. He's spitting it out maybe. Zok the Taz in Tafkuf Samach Zayin Sivkat Aleph. Listen to this. First, the Taz says that why is it mutter on, why is it also on a taanis to taste? Because the issa, the achila v'shasiya kabbalah avaloi hana. There's no issa of hana on a taanis. Zok the Taz oy bazoi. If someone's moed hana from an meichel, he's also even to taste it. And it's a beautiful shittasai. Because if we're establishing that taka there is hana, but the issa of taanis achila maybe. But if you moed hana is us. So you see minei ubei, it is hana. The question is, achila, you need achila. Taanis, depending which taanis. Now let me ask you part two. Someone made a shvuah. Shvuah shelo yoichal hayoim. Can he taste food today? So this is the Sholem Eshiv in Chamisha Siman Samach Aleph, and he says, if you made a shvuah not to eat, you could be toyim. Taaim is not achila. Frag the Sholem Eshiv, why don't we say chatzi shir? Since you made a shvuah deraisa, chatzi asam and atayra. So his teretz basically is, it's not chatzi shir. What was your shvuah? Not to eat. So taaim is not eating. You can't play baseball because you made a taanis not to eat. You made a shvuah not to eat. It's a different currency. So this really highlights our point that really there are two distinct factors, achila and hana. What's the halacha? Each case is different. B'chsanen is totally an achila. Taanis, it depends. Taanis yachid is mutter. Taanis sib is asa. Okay, now Baruch Hashem, we have enough information. Let us begin the halacha l'maisa. So we'll start with the most common shayla, probably tasting food. So let's talk about our case. You make a coffee in the coffee room, let's say downstairs, you bring it upstairs. Where do you make the bracha? Downstairs, upstairs, and we're assuming one building is no shini makom. So you can make a bracha downstairs and drink it upstairs. Do you make a bracha on taima's coffee that you bring from the coffee room to a different room? So what's his talion? Our shayla. According to the Rach, if you don't spit it out, you have to make a bracha. According to other Rishonim, taima is that even if you boilay it, but if it's kavanas taima, there's no bracha. So how do we paskin? So the Torah in our Simon Reish Yud, he starts with like sort of a kasha. You can't have anah b'loi bracha, but taima is different. And he explains. Some say taima means toyim u'poilit, but some say even if you swallow. And he doesn't. He's not machriya. And as we have two shittas without achra. The Shulchan Aruch Bayos Reish Yud Sif Beis also quotes two shittas. But if you look in the Ramah, the suffix brachas lahakol, and the source is the Beis Yosef, because Beis Yosef on the Torah says, since we have a Rif and Rambam that you don't make a bracha even if you swallow, that's halacha l'maisa. So it's not a done deal, clear cut. It's a machlokes gedolei rishonim. The Torah and the Shulchan Aruch are not machriya. The Ramah says suffix brachas lahakol. Now, it's interesting, the Magen Avram in Sifkat and Yud is very unhappy with the Ramah. He says a pretty strong lashon. We didn't find one paisik that says that you're allowed to swallow without a bracha. Now, we did find, but that's what he says. And he says, Lamaisa, if you swallow, you must make a bracha. But the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Yudalet says that's not correct. The Ramah says, Safek brachas lahakol. Not only you don't have to make a bracha on taanis, you're not allowed to make a bracha on taanis. Maybe there's no chiyuv bracha. So our coffee question, like the Mishnah Berurah, our paisik, is asa to make a bracha. But Mishnah Berurah recognized that you have a Magen Avram and you have a rach. He says the best eitzah is to follow the advice of the Chayodim in Mem Tes Hey that says a very practical approach. You're holding a cup of coffee in your hand. It's a good cup of coffee. It's not like it's raw. Maybe it needs a little more sugar. So why drink it l'shem te'ima and run at machlokes rishonim and safek brachas lahakol? Drink it l'shem shtia, enjoy it, and make a bracha. In other words, what he's saying is, really this is chayiv and a bracha. But you're flashing your taanis card, and taanis is no bracha. So why do that? Drink it l'shem shtia, and make a bracha gesund to hate. Now this is really highlights the uniqueness of this sugya. It's the exact same coffee, va'ika tali b'kavana saleh, like the Magen Avram says, kipshutei. Now the Sharetzian early in Sifkat Lamed wonders, but really your kavanah is taanis. But Lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah, in Mishnah Berurah he writes that's an eitzah. Ramosh and Aleph Ayin Tes says we have no suffix about it. The Mishnah Berurah holds if you drink the coffee, the same coffee, l'shem shtia, you make a bracha. Now the truth is this is a perfect example because it's a good coffee. So why label it taanis and have a suffix? Label it shtia and have no suffix. That's l'chayra pashut. A little more of a question, a person's preparing food, and he tastes the food to see if it's properly seasoned. What's my shaila? I'll tell you why. Because all agree, don't forget, that the only het is less than a shear, less than a kazayas. On a busy Erev Yom Tov, Erev Shabbos, if you have a few te'imas, do they add up to a kazayas? Because if it's an os ma'ayim, you're doing pretty good. So this is a machlokes gedolei rishonim. So that's why by tasting food, especially if there's more than one, it's very much kedai to avoid sfeikis and have a mind to l'shem achila, like the Chayodim says, and then you avoid sfeikis. So now somebody asked me a good question that deserves an answer. He said, I don't understand. You're holding a cup of coffee or you're holding food. Halacha it's pater. You go ahead and have kavanah l'shem achila and make a bracha. Isn't that goyim bracha she'eina tzricha? You're creating a chiyuv bracha. I said it's not true for two reasons. First of all, Moshe has a klal. When you have a suffix brachas, you're allowed to be goyim bracha she'eina tzricha. You don't want to run into sveikis. But more than that, your whole question I think is based on a wrong assumption, because bemes coffee requires a bracha. It's your decision to label this te'ima that you're pater, which is a suffix. So don't label it te'ima. Eat, drink, l'shem achila. So you're not making a chiyuv. You're just not choosing a ptur. And that's why it's pashut, the best eitzah in any te'ima, when possible, is to have enough achila and make a bracha. Now why do I stress this? Because the truth is sometimes you're tasting raw ingredients. I'm not a big cook, but let's say raw batter, whatever it is, and you taste it, it's not achila. So it makes sense, that case, just taste without a bracha. Or spit it out if it's better. It has to make sense, it's achila. A cup of coffee is a cup of coffee. And the Kaf HaChaim, Sifkat and Chabei says, if you're tasting before you made the food, then don't make a bracha. And I think one of the points of his psak is, if it's raw ingredient, it's not kishmak. So you can't say achila if it's not achila. It has to make sense. I'll give you a better mashal. There's an alta Yiddish sheminik, you have a baby bottle, it's isomil, but it has to be the right temperature. Too hot's no good, too cold is no good. So the mother puts it into a shissel of water. Hopefully it gets warm, but maybe it's too hot, maybe it's too cold. So the mother tastes some of the isomil. So do you make a bracha? So team don't make a bracha. What are you going to say? Like the chayodam have a mind to enjoy the isomil? It's not going to work. You don't enjoy like a fraction of an ounce of isomil. So if you can't really logically said it's a achila, then stick with the ikadadin. Ta'ima does not require a bracha. Okay, if you enjoy the isomil, gesundheit. I'll give you a better mashal. This is a yeshiva shishayla, but it happens all the time in yeshiva. There's a bowl of white particles on the table. You're not sure if it's salt or sugar. You want to make a coffee, but a tablespoon of salt is not good for your coffee. So what do? You taste it. So you pick up a granule of this undefined white, substance, and you make a bracha. Do you make a bracha? No. I like the chayodam. You should have a mind l'shem achila. But then again, if it's salt, you're not going to enjoy it. Even though the Mishnah says salt, you make a shackle. It's in Shulchan Aruch. But it's hard to turn a granule of salt into an achila. So then stick with the ikadadin that taka there's no bracha. Ta'ima u'poilet u'baileya is not m'chayiv in a bracha. The emphasis, that case, the best thing would be, especially if it's, you do it like you're spitting out a pit, spit out whatever you toyim. Toyim u'poilet, there's no suffix, there's no bracha. The old-fashioned baby food, if you know from Yeridea, Hamish Gemach, they used to take chicken, lamashal, the mother would be loyous, chew it up, spit it out, and feed the baby. So that was the metzias that was done. The question is, does the mother make a bracha when she's loyous, a geshmak piece of chicken or meat? So this is pashit. This is toyim or pilot. And Taka the Mishnah Berurah and Sivka and Yud Ches quotes, he doesn't quote anybody, it's his own chiddush, but it's pashit. That case, no one holds you make a bracha. That's toyim or pilot. Now, regarding waiting 6 hours, Kayadua and Yeridea pay tes aleph, you have to wait 6 hours because of the basa bein hashinai. The Magen Avram has an important point. Let's say you taste the food after it was made to know if it came out good. So we say, well, you're tasting the food, no bracha. Like the Magen Avram, I'm sorry. After you made it already, you can't correct it. So that's an achila. You can't call achila tima. And he points out something amazing. In Shmuel Aleph, Perek Yud Daled, the famous story where Shaul was fighting with Klal Yisrael, a war. He said, whoever eats anything today should die. His son Yonasan was unaware of this, and was toying a little bit honey, the Ktei the famous Ktei story. And then he was told, Oive, you're not allowed to. So the Medrash says, on this part, Medrash Eichatoiv, that you know what saved Yonasan's life? Hamatemes eina tuna bracha. Like a Medrash Pliya. So the Magen Avram, our Magen Avram, on the page, Reish Yud, he says, you know what Pshat is? He wanted to eat more. But since he was told about the shul, he stopped. So that's a small amount, Matemes eina tuna bracha. If it doesn't need a bracha, it's not achila and doesn't die. One says, but that's very hard to believe. If you ate it l'shem achila, you can't turn it into matemes. So that's a tzorachin on that chazal. But it's interesting. We have a Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. Don't forget, Shmuel Aleph is Nevi'im, Eiv is Ksuvim, and Parashat Yakov is Torah. Tanakh, we find a reference to Ta'ima, yes or no. But Lamaisa, I want to make a point. Magen Avram has a valid point regarding a more common shayla. That's our next shayla. And that is the Heilig Minig Yisrael, quoted by Magen Avram, Reish Nun, B'Shem Arizal, of Erev Shabbos Tayameh. Now, I mean Erev Shabbos Tayameh. I don't mean Thursday night when a person buys a gallon of cholent and he calls it Tayameh. That needs a bracha, Shenemo. I'm talking about the minig that the tzaddikim were busy with, Erev Shabbos Ta'ima, Tayameh Chayim Zochu. So the emes is, if you look closely, there are really two parts of the minig. The Mishnah Berurah already, I'm sure Pikabol is much more, but Mishnah Berurah in Reish Nun says that you taste it k'dei l'saknan yofa. So just in case it's not good, you have to correct it. In fact, the Machzavitchi says you have to taste the cholent, al cholent bias. Because if it's not girotin, then the shalom bayis is shaky. But then the Sharatzian adds, the etzem te'ima hi mitzvah. And taka tzadikim gedolim would go taste the food. They didn't even know where the salt was to add salt. They couldn't do it even if they wanted to. But it's not out that. It's an ends for itself. So l'chayra, the chiyav, is there a chiyav bracha on te'ima? It depends what type of te'ima it is. If you're doing it strictly to know should I adjust it or not, that's regular te'ima, ain't ta'im bracha. And we have the Chayodim's Eitzah to have a mind l'shem achila. But if you're doing it al stinyonim, and no way are you going to correct it, especially if it's made already, then avad you make a bracha. And taka the kafachayim, in Sivkot and the Chav Gimel, he doesn't explain the whole detail, but he does say, on the Erev Shabbos te'ima, a bracha is said. In other words, it's an achila l'shem Shabbos. Especially in the camps and the yeshivas, they give, Friday afternoon, they give tayameh, kugel. So yala das is no bracha. That's an achila. Now, the fact you call it te'ima is a wishful thinking that it's te'ima, but it's not. Interesting question. I should mention also the Chavas Yo'er in Siman Kuf Samach regarding Erev Shabbos te'ima taka, but he has an interesting point, and he says, could be the only heta, p'tur of te'ima is only on mashka. Why should he say that? Because when the Gemara says, when is a mutter te'ima? Ad revius. What about a kazayis? So he feels that achila is more of a significant hana, and even te'ima of a small amount is asa. But it's nitchav in the paiskim, but it's interesting, the point is, the fact that revius as opposed to a kazayis. Someone has a shaila if the food is, not a shaila, a question if the food is spoiled, and he wants to taste it. Do you make a bracha on that tasting? So again, it's a real te'ima. The Chayodam might suggest te'ima, having kavanot shem achila. But if you really have a suspicion that this is spoiled, it's hard to believe. There's no bracha. So to make a bracha, misafik, stay with the ikadadin, be toyim it, and if you want, be poiled it, but even if you boilay it, because it's good, there's no chiyuv bracha. Someone asked me, they have before Pesach, they have a free wine tasting, they give different wines to taste. So, of course, the only shaila is if you don't end up with a revius. Don't forget, you taste a revius of wine, even the te'im is mechayah. So I'm not a big wine drinker, but I said, well, if you toyim or poil it, then if you don't make a bracha, but if you drink it, you should have a kavanah l'shem achil ashtiyah, make a bracha. He said, oh, you don't understand. The whole te'ima works if you spit it out. Because you can't taste wine, a few wines, for some reason it doesn't work. Again, I'm not a big maven. But to me it's funny because you're going to have a line of people tasting and spitting out wine. But I don't know the kavanah. But one thing I will say, if you toyim ubayleya, make it in a little bit without a bracha, but make sure you don't have a revius. If you toyim upoil, then there's no doubt about it, no bracha is said. The old-fashioned candy, they didn't have candy. So one of their sweets, they used to take a sugar cane, like a piece of a bark of sugar cane, and suck it. Do you make a bracha on that sugar cane? So it seems like a te'ima because you're not eating the bark, but that's wrong. You are eating the juice, I don't know the right word, the juice, the extract, and indeed the Shulchan Aruch and Reish Beis Sif Tezvav, the Mechaba, Hamoitzitz Kanem Mesukais, you make a shahakol. It maybe gives an impression of te'ima because you're not swallowing the bark, but that's not te'ima. We have a question, unfortunately it was negated, especially during COVID, people lost their sense of taste. And pashat food doesn't taste good. When they eat, do they make a bracha? So the emes is, avada is a chiyuv bracha. It's a regular ma'isa achila, and there's a regular hanas me'ayim. Okay, he doesn't have a taste, so it'll be like the tzaddikim that wish they would have no taste for food, they shem shemayim. But that's not the main component in the bracha. The bracha is normal achila and hanas me'ayim. Why do I stress normal achila? Because we all know the sugya, if someone takes a piece of food, regular food, and karchay b'siv, he wraps it around in a tissue and swallows it, there's no bracha. There's a hanas me'ayim. The teretz is, if it's not a ma'isa achila, you're not yoytza a mitzvah, and there's no bracha. That's because it's not a normal derech achila. But if a person has no taste, no sense of taste, and he eats regularly, that's a regular achila. Regular achila with hanas me'ayim qualifies for bracha. I once saw Heintik Seifa, he says, if someone, Layalenu, is on intravenous, he's living on intravenous, so it's a suffix if he's chayiv to make a bracha, because he's living on it. Best we get to hear a bracha from someone else that's making a bracha. Now, I looked in his source, he quotes a half a dozen poskim that speak about what's called intragastric feeding, which they used to have, for a long time already. Basically, they took food, they crushed it up, and they put it through a tube into the stomach. So this posik assumed that intragastric feeding is a suffix. If you make a bracha, and taka posik say, you should hear a bracha from someone else, who adin intravenous. But that's wrong. But it's a mistake in the Metzias. Because intragastric feeding, they taka put regular food stuff into the stomach. It's hanas me'ayim without a ma'is achila. Intravenous is not food. They don't put cholent in the person's veins. Also, they don't put it into the stomach, into the veins. It's not an achila, not a ma'isa, it's not a hanas me'ayim, it's not even an oichel. So I wrote him and he said, yeah, you're right, and he corrected it. But again, it's a toys and havana. Intragastric is at least hanas me'ayim. Intravenous is not food, it's not in the me'ayim, and it's zicha no bracha. Modern the shaila, but it's too good to give up because it's part of our sugya. Someone's on a strict diet, but he misses his foods. So it's a shtickle of a modern mensch, taka. Modern mensch has modern shailas. So he takes his favorite food, chews it, gets the geschmack, and then quickly spits it out. Nothing goes down. But he chews the food. Does he make a bracha on that? So believe it or not, even if he have a kavana for taste, but there's no achila. There's no bliya. The sensation of taste is not mechayiv bracha rishayna. Now, the emphasis is that I should mention, the Rabbi already says, don't be toyim or poilit because it's baltashchis. That's also, to take good food and chew it up. No one's going to eat your shirayim, trust me, from this food. But it's interesting that on a taanis that would be also. Because he's eating it l'shem hana. No, that's a significant hana. But in hilchas brachas, even that is okay. No chiyah bracha. But again, the point is that his te'ima is not more than a symphony orchestra. And the bracha is only on a ma'isa achila of a food. A very thought-provoking question. And tein l'chacham v'yech kamay, because we have to move on, but at least mention the question. The Gemara says, and it's kepaskin in Shulchan Aruch Reish Dal Ches, if someone eats a food for only one reason, for a fuah, he does not like broccoli b'shemayfim. He's only eating it because he must eat broccoli. So the more paskins, and that's bili safik, if you ate the food normally and swallowed it, you make a bracha. Why? Because asal hanis b'lei bracha. So with this, what's called an oichel umashkim l'shem refuah, you make a bracha. Frag the Taras Chaim, Chaim Soif, and Reish Yud, Sivkot Yud Gimel. Why don't we say that's a new type of mita'emes? Mita'emes, you're swallowing the food. But there's no kavanas achila. Why don't we say every oichel l'shem refuah is a new form of mita'emes? You're eating shaloi l'shem achila. So the truth is, if it's more than a kazayis, there's no shaila. Because even mita'emes is chayiv. But his question is on less than a kazayis. So the probable teretz is that mata'emes you don't even want to swallow, but you don't want to spit it out. It's not nice. There's no kavanah to swallow, just as behechrich. Here you want to eat it. Here it is enough of a ma'isa to mechayiv a bracha. But what I did see the mincha shloim in chelik aleph siman yud ches yivkot and vav geshmaki yisoid. The famous toisvis in brachas mem hey. If a person has to take a pill, so he drinks water, you don't make a bracha on the pill on that water. But if you take juice to swallow a pill, you make a bracha. Zok Shem Zalman, this is a beautiful taisel shitasei. Because be'emes, even if you take juice to swallow the pill, are you taking it for the juice? Taking to swallow the pill. Why isn't this meta'emes? So he says, that by us, in brachas, daf yudalid, mit'emes only toyim upoilit, but by lay you always make a bracha. The same Taisa says, if you take juice and you swallow it, you make a bracha. Because even if it's ta'ima u baileya needs a bracha. Now the truth is, this opens a whole new window of ta'ima. You know, you could ask, if someone goes to a tish and he gets shirayim, so do you make a bracha on it? So that's one thing, you don't get more than a kazayis, that's for sure. But the question is, are you eating it l'shem achila? Are you eating it because of the school of Shabbai? So they asked Reb Chaim, so Reb Chaim said, depends if you have a kazayis or not. I guess they never went to a tish. But it's a new type of question. The Mekroi Kodesh is a davar nifla moed. The Rambam holds you have to have a kazayis for karpas. So the kash is, there's no din of achilas karpas. So he says, the Rambam shitasai, that ta'im is up to a kazayis even if you swallow. So karpas that you're eating, l'shem mitzvah, is a ta'ima. So there's a new expansion of the word ta'ima, not kavanas achila. So that's a little tricky. We'll leave that for a different time. But I'll tell you another beautiful mashal nagei l'maisa. And that is, today, we live in a world, I should say, everything's taste. We have flavored dental floss, flavored envelopes, flavored toothpicks. Now, technically, it's a foodstuff, and it's almost inevitable some of it actually is swallowed. Do you make a bracha on a flavored toothpick? It sounds ludicrous. But then again, why is it not hana of a kosher? The teretz is, this is a new type of ta'ima. No one buys flavored envelopes to have hanas me'ayim. Correct? No one does hanas me'ayim. You like the taste because you're in the world of taste, and you can't spit it out, so make a taste, you swallow it. But this, and also your favorite toothpaste, that some of it goes down, or your favorite mouthwash, that some of it goes down, even though you could say technically it's food that goes down, but this would be a numa te'emes. It's not l'shem achila. It's not l'shem hanas me'ayim. So that l'chayra is pashut. The more of a challenging question is today, the breath fresheners, Listerine, pocket packs, they have like a thin, looks like a piece of plastic, looks like Listerine mouthwash. People put it on their tongue, and they keep it on the tongue, and it dissolves, and it refreshes their breath. So you should know, we spoke about this a few weeks ago, these are all food ingredients that needs a hechsha. The question is, do you make a bracha on this? Because again, it's a food ingredients, you put in your tongue and it goes down. It's not dried Listerine, which is not a food. It's real McCoy oichel. So there are paisim that say, why is it different than a candy? You suck the candy, you make a bracha. You suck the Listerine strip, you make a bracha. But the emes is, it's very illogical, and most paisim say there's no bracha. Why? So here we come to our yisoid, and I think it's pretty much pronounced. Because here, you're not mechaven to swallow it. If someone buys it and swallows it whole, he's a batlin, doesn't have a benefit. It's not a food. It's supposed to freshen or refreshen the breath. But again, it's not practical to spit it out. So, mechateis, you swallow it. But this would be a real McCoy ta'ima. There's no kavanas achila. It's mamash like the mouthwash and the toothpicks and all the heintige taste that are not kavanas achila. The Magen Avraham even says about smoking, which is an anah, but there's no achila. So that's why all these are in one category. It's a new type of ta'ima. Now, but, I must make this big but, this has no shaykhis to sucking candy or sucking bark of a sugar cane. Because there your kavana is to get out real food. This is not real food. I mean, it's real ingredients, but there's no kavana to swallow it down. The Knei Boisim and Dalid Tezayin, the V'zayis HaBracha, page 333, both say that on a Listerine strip, there is no bracha rishayna being said. Now, if someone mamish he enjoys this balei v'nefesh, he would take it without the benefit? No, it's achila. But typically it's not the case. Gum, there are poskim that hold avada that gum, l'choira, you don't swallow the gum. So there's a tshuva from one of the gedolei poskei svara, got a big makubal, the Yaskel Avdi Chelek Ches Siman Chaf Oisnan Dalit, and he says the hana does not get to the garoin. Ain't a doima, it's not at all doima to sugarcane. Achush yeyet shemoitzes hamastik loim agim menu shum dava lecheich. It's just a little bit of taste, and he says gum does not require bracha. It's a new type of ta'ima. Now this is hard to understand. The metzias is gum has a flavor. We'll say that tzvei dinim. There's the gum part that you just chew and chew and chew, but there's a flavor. So I saw the Kinyan Torah Chelekei Yud Zayin, the Abiyah Oim Zayin Lam Gimel the Arlatzin Yudal Ches, and Rabbi Yashav also all say gum. The gum part of it, that's ta'ima, but the flavor part of it, it's no different than a sucking candy and the sugar cane. So no doubt about it, a bracha is said on gum. Now the only thing I would say, let's say a person chewed his gum, took it out of his mouth, and went someplace else, now wants to again chew what we used to call as children the already been chewed ABC gum, already been chewed gum. Do you make a bracha on ABC gum? That's that not. Why? There's no juice, that's pashut. But gum in itself is chayiv in a bracha. Question that's very common, seems to be a different sugya, but it's mamash our sugya. A person makes a bracha, l'mashal makes a moitzi. As he's chewing, before he swallowed the challah, he spoke out. Or he said amen, that halacha is a hefsek. So let's freeze. He made a bracha, loyis, didn't swallow, and he was mafsik. They make another bracha. So the shla in the new print is chelik aleph amid shin samach vav. The shla has this question, and the shla says, as long as you're loyis, the bracha was already chal, and there's no hefsek. Frek the Magen Avram and Kuf Samach Zayin, Sif Kotem Zayin, I can't believe it. How could that be? We paskin mata'emes, ein a tuna bracha. So being loyis is not enough of a ma'isa achila. So in our case, how did that play itself out? If you're only loyis and you didn't swallow, is the bracha chal yet? Absolutely not, because you didn't swallow. So Fregdi Magen Avram, since Mata'emes is not a chiyuv bracha because you didn't, before you swallowed, it's not a ma'isa achila, so how could the shla say that it's not a hefsek? Now it's a plea to me, if you look in the Magen Avram, look in the shla, he mamash bavarns this. He quotes the Gemara, he didn't forget the Gemara, but the teretz in the understanding of the shla is beautiful. If you are mechaven l'shem te'ima, ikka kavanah b'kavanah salev, and there's no bracha. But here, this is part one of a bona fide achila. And the halachos taanis, it's kedai to see it inside. In Beis Lamed Gimel, he has this shaila and this psak, doesn't bring the shla, and he says, you know what it's like? You make a bracha on badikas chametz, you checked one room and then you spoke out, which you shouldn't have, but you don't make another bracha. Now, apparently, the Magen Avram held that soif kol soif has cholas achila, but you didn't swallow. So the bracha wasn't chal because there's no swallowing. The Mishnah Berurah and Kuf Samach Zayin Lamed Hey has this suffix, but he throws in an important concept based on the Chayyada. Let's say you didn't swallow any of the actual challah, but since you chewed, inevitably some of the, I know the right word, juice, the taste, some of the taste of it went down already. So the Chayyada, in that case, there's no suffix. Because that's like, what we're going to say, that's like sucking candy and gum and sugar cane. You don't have to swallow a salad to make the bracha shbichal. So Mr. Brewer found sort of a happy compromise. If you stam chewed and nothing went down, just the le'isa, ma'isa achila, that's not pashut at all. But if you swallowed at least a small amount, the smallest amount of the juice, then the bracha is chal, not because of le'isa, because of the bliya. And Avad it's not te'ima, because it's kavanas achila. But I did see the Levushay Mordechai, that's the Adar and Simon Chavtes says, let's say you started chewing and nothing went down. and you hear an amen, should you al-chatchila say amen based on the shlah? He says, no, that not. Maybe the shlah is b'di'evet, but don't put yourself in sveikus. Question that comes up in many forms. A person made a bracha rishayna and then chapt oy gewalt. I shouldn't have done that. Why not? Why can't he eat? Well, today's a taanis. He forgot there's a taanis today. Or I'm fleishigs and he made a bracha on a cup of milk. Or it's meat and he forgot it's the 9 days. Or he made a bracha. Oh yeah, I didn't have Adar yet. Bekitza, it's many forms, but the same idea. You're holding a food in your hand. You made a bracha, but it's asa to eat. Now where do you go? So the emphasis, this is a sugya for itself. We're not going to get into it. The paiskim seemed mechalik. If it's an issa to eat that food, issa d'Rabbanan like taanis, or it's taka asa d'Rabbanan, then don't eat bekum vasei because you're doing an issa d'Rabbanan bekum vasei. Better, cut your losses and just bracha l'vatala. If it's only a minig, l'mashal waiting 6 hours and let's say only 4 hours, or meat during the 9 days only a minig, then it's better to eat a drop. The bracha is chal. This way, you didn't make it a bracha batal. But when no one suggests, l'chayr, what we would say, what's the big deal? Put it in your mouth, taste it, and spit it out. So you didn't eat the tarfus, but the bracha is chal. Why doesn't anybody suggest that? Because if it's a real bona fide ta'ima ain't tzarech bracha, you're not gaining. Rav Sternbuch Kedarka Aleph Shin Chav Tes Netshuvah has a very nice chap. He says if you taste the food in your mouth, l'chavonas te'ima, so you have one sheet that it holds, that's taken enough of a ma'is achila. L'gabi the bracha. So maybe that's the eitzah, but basically the klal is until we learn that shir, half cup and don't make a bracha on what you're not supposed to. Ma'is shahayi, listen to this beautiful shayla. Someone wanted to buy perfume, and they were given a choice of 3 perfumes, and they're all real psamim that needs a bracha. So he wanted to smell it. Before you buy, you smell it. Do you make a bracha on it? It's real perfume. But he was clearing, is that a te'ima in psamim? He's te'ima to know what to buy. Or let's talk more common. The person has a stuffed nose, he's a bad cold. It's about to make a bracha on psamim. He doesn't know if he'll be able to smell tonight. He says he's not doing too well. Can he smell first? And then if he smells, make a bracha then? Or he has his Elftazay, his psamim holder. He's not sure if it has any smell in it. Can he smell it first? And then if it's good, make a bracha? So you wonder, this is mamish, what's the shayla? How can you smell without a bracha? Bracha is mem gimel, kol hasham talaka. But for us, there's a beautiful shayla. Is this a new form of te'ima? Ein tzarech bracha. And taka de kafachayim and reish tezayin gimel. On both these shaylas, either to taste it, or if you want to know if you have a sense of smell, he says te'ima loy tuna bracha. But I must say, most poskim feel that that's incorrect, because first of all, the only het the te'ima in the best scenario is less than a kazayis. How do you quantify one whiff of psamim? That's maybe one kazayis. And more so, te'ima, you could say it's only te'ima, you could label it differently. You put it in your mouth, you spit it out, even if you swallow it. But this is the same ma'is haracha. So that's why the poskim say, in such a case, it's probably mechuyev in a bracha l'chatchila. But the best thing would be, have kavana l'shem haracha, like the chayada, and make a bracha l'chol hadayis. What I did see, and this is important, the second shayla, the second group of shaylas, you're not sure if you could smell, or this has a reyach, so to make a bracha is a safik brachas. So then I saw dakat kafachayim, but the Berch Sabayis Chavav Lamed says, since you have to make a bracha of psamim, so you smell it first, see if you could smell, or it has a smell, rely on te'ima, and then make the bracha and smell it again. Question. Taanis, a person, Asar B'Tevis Shechal Erev Shabbos, or next week is Taanis Esther, and a person's cooking food. Can you taste the food on a taanis? So this, the Mechaba, much later, Tafkuf Samach Zayin Aleph, says, Ashari B'Taanis could taste up to Revius, but you must spit it out. Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, even that's also. So the Mishnah Berurah, and you look in the Biur also, the Mechaba holds Mi'ikad Din that Ta'ima, the only het of Ta'ima is Toyim U'Poilet. And by a taanis, Ta'ima of Poilet is also asa. Because it's enough of Hana that you asked it on a taanis. The only heta is the only issa is Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, but on all other taniyos, since you're doing it l'shem Ta'ima, you could be toyim u'poilet, but not more, not toyim u'oichel. So we see on all taniyos you're allowed to be toyim u'poilet. So Erev Shabbos you could be toyim. The Ramah says no. We paskin like Toisvis. Shar tani that the taanis sibur is awesome. The only heta is taanis yachid. So shar tani the taanis sibur is awesome. So the Mishnah Berurah, but b'mokei mitzvah you can rely on the machaba. So I would guess on a Asar B'Tevis Erev Shabbos, person has to know if the food is good. You can make toyim u'poilet, but not beileya for sure. A person has a dentist visit. Can he visit dentist on a taanis? So there's definitely toyim u'poilet. So Shlomo Zalman said, if there's makam tsar, we have the same heta of the Mishnah Berurah, makam tsar, you could be toyim u'poilet. Question: taanis, and a person's a long taanis, especially he wants to freshen his breath. Can he gargle with mouthwash? Or even use toothpaste, and I'll make sure nothing goes down. He'll stand his head over the sink. Just be toyim, u'poilet, mouthwash, water, or toothpaste. So this is the Shulchan Aruch in the end of Tafkuf Samach Zayin. Misha darku lerchitz piv b'shachris, and don't forget the Machab and Siman Daled Yud Zayin. We're all supposed to rinse our mouths before davening al tzkvayt hashchina. But taanis sibah like kosher lemevet hachim. It's not correct based on a Chumas Hadesha. But a taanis yachid, you're allowed to. And that's why mi'ikad din, rinsing a mouth washing, tooth brushing on a taanis, tzibur is awesome. The Mishnah Berurah, based on a Chayei Adam El Yerabah, said, if it's mitzdayer, you could rinse your mouth on a regular taanis tzibur. Tisha B'Av, like Mishnah Berurah, only his lashon is by a tsar gadol. So mechalik Tisha B'Av and other taniyos, and this is very negeya. Can you mouthwash on a taanis? If a person feels uncomfortable, he could. Tisha B'Av, tsar gadol. Sokti ber Moshe chelik ches tzadik dalid. If you are qualified to be a mitzdayer, it's probably better to use mouthwash than water, because water saf kosaf is a mashka, and this is not a mashka. So mouthwashing avada is okay if it's a tsar or a tsar gadol. Taanis Esther, interesting, is the whole question. It's really not from Dal Taniyos. It's not even Avelis. But the Shraga Meir says in Chelik Ches Ayin Zayin Lagabi, this halacha, you could be saying, you have to be machmir that it's one of the taanis that we're mechuyev in. The Emek halacha to the Gosin Aleph Amavav says toothpaste that's mos levloya oisoi. You could also brush your teeth if you're mitzdayer. It's not a dafka mouthwash, toothpaste. Chosen or kala, b'yom chupas that are fasting, I think is more pashit that it's mutter. Why more pashit? There's a taanis yachin, I found the Shraga Meir and Gimel Kuv Gimel has this shaila. And the last group of questions is kashrus questions. Let's say you have a question if this food is treif or not. And somehow if you taste it, you can know if it's treif. You have a good sense of taste. Can I taste the food and spit it out to know if it's treif or not? So we would say, taimu pilot, what's the shaila? But then again, the Rivash in Aleph Reish Peches says it can't be that it's mutter. Because we know the whole sugin chulin, that if you have a suffix, you call a kfeil, a goyish, a connoisseur. Why don't you do it yourself? So up to Rivash, when you're talking about an issa, especially issa deraisa, tasting it might go down. So he says, if it does go down, oh, that's a chatzi shir. So there's a special issa derban, don't taste tarfus. And that's why this cook, going for his lessons, should not be tasting treifa food. Don't forget, he's probably embarrassed to spit it out, so he might end up swallowing it. So to taste food, even Taim u'poilit is vadei awesome. If someone is fleishigs and is making a halachic dish, let's say Erev Shavuos, for some reason they taste the fleish, they want to have halachics. Is there any way of tasting halachics? So if you do it right, you keep it on the tip of your tongue and spit it out, and makam tzarech can't be awesome. It's taim u'poilit. If someone wants to taste fleishigs and remain halachics, don't swallow it, again, be taim u'poilit, and then there's no problem of bein hashnayim or moishech tam. What I found beautiful, my last shaila, this woman that by mistake swallowed a half a spoonful of cholent juice. It wasn't meat, it was tafshil shel basa. So what's the shaila? You have to wait 6 hours, tafshil basa. So here I said, and I found, someone told me the flaw, I didn't see the flaw inside, but someone the flaw in Yeridea says the same yisoid. He says, really, tafshil basa is not a ma'isa, that's not mechayiv in 6 hours. Because there's no reason to wait 6 hours. But there's like plug. So it could be like plug is shaykh when you ate tafshil shabasa. What this woman did was a te'ima. So it's not a ma'isa achila. Who said we make a like plug on a non-ma'isa achila? So even though I wouldn't advise the chatchila, but if they swallowed tafshil shabasa, it's only like plug, and in this case it would be okay because it's only te'ima. I wouldn't talk to you. The voice held it. No. So, what's that?
To the side. Shem Egan Shir, like a big character of Smith for today's shir. There's Shem after Kaddish, will be a te'ima of the shir with a sikkim. Schrijf. We gaan niet met elkaar schemmen, dat ik boven de zaken is zo veel om te missen snema alleen nog af is maar zit ik ja ik doet er ja.
Hey. Go ahead. Have team in here? No, not missing them. Wow, Shekoya.
Okay, Rabbi said that the tasting, the sheer tasting will start right now. Sikkim of today's shir team. Allah.
What?
Tasting after the eating.
You mind writing it in? It's very close. If you don't mind. Whatever you want. Just the chazal we learned today, Ta'ima basically really depends on each sugya. Ta'ima has one or two connotations. Either it's Taim u'poilit, Taim u'beileya. But if the issa is Hana and he's mechaven for Hana, then even Ta'ima u'poilit can be asa. But regarding brachas, it's clear that it has to be a Hana. Hanas me'ayim l'shem achila, and therefore Taim u'poilit never requires a bracha rishayna, even if it's kavana l'shem te'ima. V'chalta v'savota v'irachta we had a remez, but regarding taanis sibor, that's a problem, because that taka te'ima u'poilit, which a person has kavana for it, taka asa. Moed hana is tali in hana, nishba shalei lechal is tali in achila. So basically each question has to be dealt with individually. L'maisa, if a person tastes a coffee, it's kedai to make a bracha when you taste it, l'shem hana. Tasting food, if it's edible and you could call it achila, make a bracha then, and have in mind l'shem achila. Kavana makes a big difference. If it's raw food, or isomil, or salt, or suffix spoiled, then it's hard to make it achila, so then you stay with halacha te'ima, even u'poilit, does not, even baileya, does not require a bracha. Halayis latinik is a regular te'ima u'poil, there's no bracha. Erev Shabbos te'ima is chayiv and a bracha, and certainly Thursday night tayameha, shirayim, or all these new type of non-kavanas achila, it's hard to call that a te'ima, because they are eating it l'shem skula, but there's a ma'is achila. The wine tasting, if you spit it out, then it could be mutter. If you swallow, especially if you have a revius, a bracha should be said, kavanas shtiya. Sugar cane is a chiyav bracha clearly because of the mesikus of it. Lost sense of taste, you make a bracha al tanas me'ayim, as opposed to intragastric or intravenous, that there's not a ma'isa achila. Diet, that once just to taste it and spit it out, should not be done because it's baltashkas, but theoretically, the hanosha boy is not mechayiv a bracha. Oichel l'shem refuah is chayiv in a bracha, it's not ta'ima because you're eating l'shem a ma'isa achila. Flavored toothpaste, toothpicks, floss is not mechayiv in a bracha, as is not a Listerine pocket pack. Gum or candy or these things, avadas chayiv in a bracha, als the mesika shaboy. If a person made a bracha before he swallowed, he spoke out. So if some of the, quote, the juice went down, the bracha certainly chal. If it's just le'isa, then it's a machlokes, a poiskim, and it's a real suffix if you should make another bracha. When a person made a bracha on an issa and realized he can't eat it because either it's taanis or 9 days, so it wouldn't help to be time or pilot. So the halacha would be, if it's an issa rabbanan, don't eat. If it's a minig, eat a drop. Ta'ima by psamim does not work because it's a full maisa haracha. Tasting on a taanis tzibur is asa. Even pilot, the only had this makkah mitzvah, erev Shabbos or the like. Rinsing with mouthwash or even toothpaste that's a person doesn't swallow is mutter if it's a tsar gadol on Tisha B'Av or a tsar on a regular taanis. Chas and kala could use mouthwash because it's a taanis yachid. A dentist appointment, if there's a tsar that you need a dentist, is okay to go to the appointment. Ta'ima of treif is also even pilot because you might eat a kosher, and so by cooking lessons you not taste the food. Tasting halachics or fleishigs and spitting it out, if you're careful, is okay. If you swallowed a little bit of tafshil shabasa, l'shem ta'ima, it's probably going to have to wait 6 hours. For listening.